Howdy, howdy. Welcome to another episode of the Watching Privacy Show with Brent and Raju. And we've got a lot to cover. I think we'll start a little slow and then steamroll into some a lot more interesting topics. But starting off just this week in privacy, on the other side of the world, I thought this was a pretty interesting one. India basically is working on some digital health initiatives. And as you can imagine, it's just nationalizing and digitizing health records for people in India, which is meant to be safe and secure as the government says it is. Um, I don't know. I mean, in general, it seems kind of tricky. I think India's kind of been on the forefront of a lot of technical innovation in terms of like payments and their ID card service for all the citizens. Plus, you had healthcare in there. I know the government has some, I would say, like negative aspects to it too. So, what are thoughts on just healthcare kind of being controlled by the government? It seems odd if you don't offer nationalized healthcare, then why is the government really bothering getting involved in this? But I could imagine because of like the fragmented nature of like Indian healthcare in general, some sort of nationalized system could be beneficial, especially to lower income people or more rural people. Um, you guys have any thoughts on kind of just government healthcare mix and match and digitizing it?
I like the fact that it's not the same ID that is linked to it. Like in our case here in US, it's the same SSN that is linked to your healthcare data too. I like the fact that they are not using the same ID; it's a different ID, and certainly those are linked to the back end. I think that that makes sense. A separate ID for each of these. But again, it comes down to government issuing IDs versus private companies amassing all the data. You're picking one over the other.
The lesser of two evils.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the decentralized healthcare system in India in general. I mean, that's the best way to go. Competition thrives. There are no national, insurance companies out there. In other words, when there are no insurance companies, medical providers compete with each other on their merit, price, and whatnot. And when you have an insurance company involved, it's about how much insurance you have, how good that insurance is, how much you can extract out of that insurance company, rather than what the real cost of medicine and the treatment is. And we have gotten to that system here in US. India, it is still affordable. Healthcare is affordable, and that is partly due to the decentralized system.
I like that they spell out the data. Of course, is the ownership of the individual. It's almost like they're saying, of course, here you got to spell everything out. I mean, it can be open to legal interpretation. I mean, do you think the people of India will be kind of good with this approach? Because I'm thinking, here there'd be a whole bunch of pushback. What do you think the response is going to be from the citizens?
I mean, frankly, privacy is not up there for India. I remember we discussed earlier that privacy is a luxury item at this point. So there are other priorities. So I don't think a lot of people will pay attention to the privacy. Certainly, there is a minority, the small segment, paying attention to it. But that is good to see. I hope that continues.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned, Raju, kind of off topic on the privacy thing, but I remember, I feel like it was a couple of months ago, there was a really good article that came out because I think in the Trump administration, there was some law or something about what do you call having hospital systems basically being forced to publish prices for certain common procedures or something along those lines. And this article, I think it was Wall Street Journal's New York Times, one of the big ones, and it basically went through in depth and it showed how like insurance-based pricing was anywhere from 4 to 10x what non-insurance pricing was for certain items because you're paying for obviously administration and a lot of middlemen when you involve the insurance company. And from a personal anecdote perspective, a couple years back when I was in India, I had to go to the hospital for something, and I remember checking out of the hospital, and I got like I think something like a 50 or 60 page itemized bill that was one incredibly cheap relative to like everything, even like cheap by like Indian standards for spending a couple days in the hospital. And it's got like every needle, every tube, every like sheet. And you're like, you would call it like nickel and diming maybe, but price transparency through the roof, like extremely clear. And you're not getting some like simple bill that says, here's 40K and go figure it out with your insurance company. This was like, I think it was like 2-3 grand for like a 4 or 5 day stay at the hospital, food included, nicest people in the world. Like, you tell them you don't like this food, cool, they'll go bring you something else. Everybody was great. And just like that transparency of price was, anytime they would do something to you, somebody would come and say, hey, look, it's going to be this much. Do you want to pay now? Do you want to pay later? How do you want to figure this out? Partially because I guess making sure that, they don't have to deal with the claims process, but that just makes that decision making so much more, I guess, easier upfront. And it was just, that transparency was just crazy. I've never seen a hospital bill that detailed.
Here that they do have detailed information, just that it's not transparent to the customer. Those details do exist with the insurance company. I was going through going through some of the information on that. A cotton swab that is basically used to wipe your thing costs $32, and that is what is sent to there. And there's a difference, I think 3 or 4x difference between a warm blanket and a regular blanket, and the insurance company pays it. And looks like every insurance company has a deal with every hospital out there, where how good a negotiator and negotiation is done between those companies.
It's a win-win, right? Because if the hospital can charge more, that means the insurance company can charge more, and the hospital makes more money. Nobody loses but the consumer in that situation, right? Even though you're paying for insurance to try to save money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've had cases where and I know friends where if they need some dental thing to be done, and when they go to India, they get it done because a lot of times it's cheaper than the copay that you pay here. And we have heard cases where even in US, people drive down to Mexico to get some procedures done. And that is a failure of the healthcare system. Again, I like the decentralized model, and where let the market and the market forces, in this case, the normal competition, play its way. And instead of, the insurance itself, I see it as an issue. How much can you extract from that insurance provider determines the cost of healthcare. Just like in the education sector, how much money can a student get in loan determines the fee structure of a college. It's very similar industries here.
Just think about extra money for a warm blanket. There's some places. Oh, you want a TV in your room? That'll cost you. Oh, you want to be able to get certain channels? That'll cost you even more. Oh, you want heat in your room, not just a heated blanket. Oh, that's going to cost you some more. I mean, it's and then I guess the top thing is, oh, you want to go to a place where they got good doctors? I mean, it's the health system here is really fascinating. If you get sick in one part of town, you got a better chance of surviving as opposed to getting sick in another part of it. Don't get me started on that.
All right, let's switch topics real quick back to privacy stuff. Move. I guess we're supposed to be talking about that. Next up in the news, this was kind of an interesting one because Google obviously makes their Chrome browser. They enabled this new API that basically lets websites determine how idle a session is, basically like a tab or something like that. So oftentimes you'll see, actually a really good example of this is a couple of weeks ago, we used to do like our annual harassment training seminar thing online. And when you sit through the course, you watch the videos, you read the stuff, you answer the questions, take the quiz, pass it, or whatever. Because the government mandates like a 2-hour, 3-hour, or whatever course it was, if your mouse leaves the window, it basically stops the timer. So then it says, you know what, you're no longer focused on this course because you clicked outside of it. So we'll stop the timer. And then whenever you come back into that window, it'll start it again. Kind of similarly, I would say, at least to my understanding, is that this new API that Chrome offers lets websites determine if someone is idle on their website or not. So that means if I just opened up Amazon.com and left it, as a tab on my browser perpetually or whatever, they would know not just how long you're interacting with it. Is it very different than what people are able to probably extract currently, or is this actually like a new level of invasion? I think there's probably a lot of JavaScript-based technology that can probably tell you a lot about this idle time. But now that it's baked into the browser directly, I feel like it's more accessible than maybe, or probably more accessible to other services that probably weren't building it out from scratch on their own. Any thoughts on just kind of this idle detection and what kind of implications that could have if the website knows how attentive you are to it?
I mean, it is needed. I think, there is definitely good use cases for it. And I'm sure there will be some abuse. The article makes a big deal out of it. I don't think it is as big a deal as the article makes it to be. But Overall, I think it's a useful one, but certainly there's going to be abuse on that front.
Yeah. Yeah, the website or article, I mean, I guess it came from Mozilla, which when it's always kind of funny when Mozilla talks smack about Google when like Mozilla survives because Google pays them, and then it's like Chrome is evil. I'm not really sure how that circle
Yeah,
ever goes, but
94% of Mozilla's revenue comes from Google.
yeah, so I'm convinced conspiracy theory is that Google keeps Mozilla around just to kind of like pull at them a little bit, poke some fun, make it seem like there's competition, make it seem like, someone's attacking us here and there.
Yeah.
And it's just like you can turn the faucet off anytime you want to and just like cripple them. But for now, let's let them kind of play as like a small person that makes noise every now and again for you, just
And
to
there is a
maintain
reason.
fun.
Although I was just going to add that it's not just the Mozilla folks. It looks like some of the Apple guys aren't buying it either. I found this quote: "None of these use cases presented either here or elsewhere are compelling, and none of the privacy or security mitigations you presented." There's like this whole dialogue going on. One of these it wasn't a Reddit, but it was kind of one of those things. So it sounds like, and actually, the one that I saw, it was going back to October of last year. So there's been a lot of ongoing conversation about this. I guess they decided to do it, but it sounds like only the Google folks are buying it. None of that Mozilla or Safari. It doesn't look like anybody else but the Google folks are buying it. But I don't know. It sounds like it's a clash of the browser titans going on around here.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Could just be all talk, but yeah, I mean, something could come out of it. Something bad could happen. I'm sure we'll see both, and we'll have something to talk about later. But then we can go down, I would say, the proverbial rabbit hole where we talk about this next one, because this was just a story that I wasn't even sure was real when I read it. It was like not the onion, basically. So the smart toilet era is here. Are you ready to share your anal print with big tech? And this thing just goes down all sorts of paths that I had no idea. But
I thought you were going to say down the drain, but
yeah, that too. There's a lot. I'm going to avoid the puns, but basically, I mean, it is what you think it is. It's a toilet that has a camera in there, and it keeps track of what you're putting in the toilet, and then you'll get some kind of analysis if maybe like you're hydrated enough, or if you're eating well, or low in fiber, and these kinds of things. Very interesting, I would say. Obviously, anything with healthcare and technology is going to be, I would say, a privacy concern for a lot of people. But this is a new frontier, that's for sure. I think the article dove into a little bit more detail. Yeah, Brent, you've got it up on the screen. You want to run through this real quick then?
Well, I have another quote that I put up that I really wanted to talk about. But I mean, no, there seems to be more of a kind of a health consciousness going on. I mean, everybody's wearing their Fitbits and their health trackers, and they're monitoring heart rates and your blood pressure and all that kind of stuff. So we're becoming, these devices are helping us to be a little bit more health conscious. And one of those things is definitely tracking things that are going into the bathroom, because they can tell a story about how healthy we are in certain respects. And so technically speaking, it sounds like it's a lot of potential good in here. I just want to go to this one. This is the thing that came to mind for me, is having your anal print out there. First of all, I didn't even know that was a word, but apparently it is now. Having it out in the world, makeup and the makeup of your bowel movements. Is there enough good to go with the potential privacy breach? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you'll likely see some data aggregators here too.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
That was a good one.
I was reading this article and it reminded me of Stephen Colbert's show from back in 2014. He basically was introducing a product called Vessel, a Silicon Valley product, which is basically a tumbler where you can drink off of, and it'll tell you how many calories you're consuming. And he obviously was making fun of it. We should link that video to this in the show. And towards the end, to make fun of that, he said, what your intake is only half the story, and you also have to measure the output. So he said, jokingly introduced a new product called Toilet or some such thing, which measures your output 1.0 and 2.0. And that was a joke. But, well, fast forward 6-7 years, well, you have a real product.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Silicon Valley or somewhere. And it's no longer a joke. So, yeah, I guess you can measure the input and output now. And there'll be data aggregators there.
I mean, like Brett was saying, I think healthcare is, everybody I think has become more health conscious, I guess, to an extent now with like the availability of these trackers, and you get insights into like what's going on in your life. I think one of the biggest problems is kind of just fragmentation of that data. Your Fitbit might track certain pieces of information. This toilet thing might track certain pieces of information. And you kind of want to, I would say, it would be nice if you had some like privacy oriented, like what is my health dashboard, right? Like you create these like blended dashboards in a corporate environment for tracking KPIs. But if I wanted to track my own personal well-being and say, look, this is my blood pressure over time, this is the amount of hours I'm getting over time, this is my weight over time, this is my BMI over time, all these details. And then if something comes anomaly, I can get some kind of notifications. But it's really hard to aggregate all that really health information. But I think it is important if every person was able to see that for themselves, I think they would be able to like make better life choices. If you see yourself, getting less sleep over time or having like a higher resting heart rate, you can identify these problems and do a lot more preventative things rather than maybe the once a year you go to the hospital and maybe you might have one or two things brought up. But sometimes like your dentist might not be talking to your primary care physician. And could there be a connection between the two? Maybe, or maybe not. But I don't know. I'm kind of bought into the idea of having some kind of like personal health dashboard being like an important thing that everybody should probably have. And the problem is privacy because you got to be able to track all that information to put it somewhere. But just for people, there's no reason why you shouldn't know what's going on in your body and how it's reacting to certain things and hopefully make better life choices. But I think technology is the problem. Is like I guess it kind of goes into maybe our next story even too, because even last week Amazon had or this week I guess Amazon had their big event and they released a couple different devices, and I think they made an update to their fitness tracker. And so Google has Fitbit, Amazon has this Halo thing, Apple has their watch. Clearly, everybody's got their own level of smart tracking devices for health and fitness. And I thought Amazon tried to make it as privacy oriented as they could. They said that that data was not used for advertising, and there was a lot of mumbo jumbo in terms of Amazon's privacy policies. I thought the funniest thing of the event was they said this device is secured with Alexa's great privacy policy or something like that. And I was like, I don't know anybody that thinks Alexa's privacy policy is great. So it's interesting that they think that. But in general, clearly big tech companies think healthcare is the frontier for some reason, right? And these are companies that primarily make their money based on advertising. And so you don't get into healthcare for public good. You get into it for future revenue. I mean, call a spade. But between these two, it's not very good.
I'll just say this. I think all you said is correct. There's the health conscious and being able to kind of track on a regular daily basis is good. But I'm still, do I want my anal print out there? I mean, I don't know, but man.
This is the beginning, Brent. First thing you need is analysis. But then get to the next level. Let's just say that these are used by multiple people, and just like a Face ID.
No. We're not doing that. I'm sorry, sir. We have to really make sure you are who you are. I was not thinking we were going there. Wow, let's move to the next one.
All right, next story. But still in the lines of surveillance. Speaking of the Amazon event, I think their little Astro robot was kind of the talk of the town this past week. And this little fella, you got to pay $1,000 to basically participate in their beta program. And last year, these guys as in Amazon came up with their like Ring security drone, which was like some base station device that has a drone that flies around your house and has a camera in it, and you can kind of look around your house when you're not away for some reason. And then this new one is a robot on wheels that they made. They tried to make it very funny that says it can't grab you a beer, but it has a cup holder in there, I think, which was kind of pointless. But it's this little thing that can drive around autonomously on its own, and it has like a telescopic camera that pops up from the top if you want to see something like over a counter or whatever. And yeah, I mean, do you want a robot with multiple cameras roaming around your house whenever you're not home for quote security?
Well, this is the street view of your house, essentially, because to really go around, you need to map up the entire place. I mean, this is what I think Roomba, some of these companies do, and that has to be done for this to navigate. Now, I guess they have one device on the floor and another flying around, whatever they introduced.
Yeah.
So you have a couple of perspectives on these. And again, I mean, for now, it's probably again a gadget, and it'll get going, and somebody will introduce combine the two, where the cleaning plus this utility and privacy implications. End of the day, what it means for you, and on top of it, the Face ID, the recognition, and all those things are going back. And I'm pretty sure setting up this device is pretty straightforward, because Amazon knows your password anyway. They're sharing with your neighbors, with whatever sidewalk and other things. But this entire process, with all these Amazon devices, and not knowing where the limit is, it's getting scary.
It was that thing that flies in the air. What's that thing called? They say
it was a Ring drone.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, I thought they had like a
Cooler name
for it. Yeah,
probably does.
They say it only starts. I guess the camera only comes on when it's doing so. I guess flying. I don't know. It doesn't stay on. They say it only goes on and starts capturing video during certain activities. I'd have to get used to. I mean, once again, and it's almost like every one of these things you can see the good and the not so good, and it feels like, for me at least, I remember when I got my very first Echo. It's literally coming up on 7 years. It'll be 7 years next month. I remember when I first saw it, I didn't really think about privacy. I just thought, oh, this is interesting. This is cool. And then, and all these devices start coming out. And the first thing was, oh, this is really cool. And you think about all the kind of the positives that come with it. Man, over the last 2 years, the mindset, at least for me, has completely changed. It's like I'm trying to find the holes now, not looking just for this is great. Now it's like, yeah, this may be great, but do you guys get a sense that more people are starting to feel like that the initial excitement of the cool tool is now being met with, the privacy concerns? Because before, I didn't feel like that years ago.
I totally agree. And in this case, it has a lot to do with the trust on the vendors, Brent. What we started to is, because of some of the abuse, all the things going on, we started losing trust on these bigger vendors, because they started abusing the data and it gotten too far. And that is actually a result of it. So I expect this to continue. If anything, it'll become mainstream.
Yeah, on the thread of trust too, I think especially Amazon, based on this last event and maybe what they've been doing the past couple of years, I feel like these guys are completely playing the fear-mongering game. And in the name of security of like the Ring product line, they are trying to provide, quote, surveillance security in exchange for privacy. But if you scare someone enough into thinking that you need, 15 cameras around your house and a flying drone and a dog-looking thing that like roams around your house and all these different like inputs to protect your home, then in exchange you're going to be like, all right, cool, I need to keep my family safe. This is all great. I'm going to go for it. But obviously at the same time, you're sacrificing a lot of information. I have no doubt that like a company like Amazon, if you have this little robot thing running around or that flying drone, one sweep of the house recording, that information goes sent back. And I mean, it's not like AWS offers, it is like AWS offers like image recognition services already. They're going to know every single boxed item that can be sold through Amazon. They'll have a complete information of your house, your fixtures, your couches, the books that are on your coffee table. Like literally everything is getting mapped. And yeah, maybe right now it's like not used for advertising purposes and some legalese is there. But I would guarantee that, first of all, this device is selling at a loss. This is not $1,000 robot that runs around, right? So you're not selling things at a loss for no reason. There's definitely a future upside there. And these guys are not idiots, obviously, either. So they know what they're doing. And they know, just like they got Brent 7 years ago with this is cool, privacy is not a thing. Now they've kind of shifted and realized that if we scare people enough, then maybe we can find another way in, because the cool factor is kind of worn off. And how else do I get these kind of things into people's homes? It's fear. That seems to be like the next best way, because there's so much emphasis on the security thing. And I mean, yeah, like, I think it's kind of secure, but honestly, like you put up like some fake, like my house is protected by signs, and you buy like $20 fake cameras outside your house, I think your chances of getting like robbed or anything happening to it is like down by like 80-90%. Just seeing a camera, no one's going to do it. And so I know a lot of people that just buy like fake cameras, ironically, on Amazon, and put them up around their house on the outside, and that's fine. Like once you see a camera, why would a burglar mess with something that has a camera when you could easily just go to one that doesn't and not take the chance? So I really think they're just playing the fear game and trying to get people, especially $1,000 device like this. This is targeting a certain income bracket that is their best earners in terms of like highest revenue customers for Whole Foods, for Amazon, for all their product suites. And so you're finding a way to milk those more than lower income people who don't have as much disposable income to spend on other things. So I think they've got a really good approach going here. Good for them, obviously, not good for us.
Initially, I think it'll find some good use cases. I expect them to find some good use cases. For example, take the real estate market where Zillow or Open House, all these companies buying out houses, and the number of people who are buying houses remotely is going up. And this is basically remote showing, where you have these devices that will basically go around and you can navigate remotely and figure out a way to get a good clarity on the house through multiple angles, and that'll be a way to buy the house. And that's a direction. I think there are some use cases like these for some of these devices, and I expect them to find some use cases like this. But eventually, when it becomes mainstream and when people start spending, buying these at their home households, with Face IDs or equivalent, will become a challenge.
I just wonder, when certain situations come up, like legal situations, or something happens in the house that you don't want anybody else to know about, but maybe the authorities or the cops want to see it. What are the legal ramifications of all this? And then I guess the other thing is, this, Tejas, you mentioned this fear thing. Fear has been going on the whole insurance industry is kind of, to a certain extent, is based on fear. I mean, you can buy insurance for stuff that'll never happen to you, but you want to be covered. And so I think fear, I guess, like works to a certain extent, not in one aspect, but I guess just because of our human frailties, that somebody says, well, this could happen, and you want to be prepared for it. So this kind of trickles into almost everything people are selling us at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that is also going to be the future of even the car insurance market, right? In some of these cases, the insurance companies make more money than the car companies per car, and right. So then it makes sense that the car companies start offering insurance. So you're right that fear is a driving factor.
Wasn't there something about Tesla offering auto insurance? Because basically, like, you can track everything that's going on in the car, so they can, between the cameras and the gyroscopes and tracking of all, you'll figure out basically who's right, who's wrong, have all the proof for it, and then I think be able to file a claim without ever having to talk to anybody. You just kind of know that it happened.
That's the perfect model where the car provider, in this case, Tesla or whoever, should be offering the insurance themselves. Which means if and it has to be low too, because if the car itself, as they claim, is safe and will keep you safe, then there should not be need for an expensive insurance out there.
Right.
And I think that's a model will likely head towards in the next few years. That'll have to change the local law saying that like insurance being mandatory and things like that. That has to change.
Yeah, I mean, most car manufacturers, I mean, a lot of them are going to just some sort of subscription-based system in addition to cars, right? Like there was BMW had a big thing about how features that are physically available in a car but are turned on or off based on a subscription, like heated seats or navigation was always a thing, but something like heated seats, you think that's built into the car, that's mine, I bought it. But if you sell it from owner to owner, that feature is deactivated, and the new owner has to then go pay $5 or $10 a month to get the heated seats. And so automakers are definitely looking for alternative ways to make more money, because clearly just making cars alone isn't good enough. But we can shift gears. I think maybe that's a good one, and I think we kind of touched on this thread too earlier for our deep dive. But I would broadly say the consolidation of certain industries and the privacy implications of it. And so this article last week really caught my eye, and I would tell someone really with a grain of salt, because the people that wrote it, they offer their own VPN service, but it's a very detailed account that basically talks about how VPN providers that I think most people are familiar with and presume are pretty safe or do extensive amounts of marketing, ExpressVPN, private internet access, NordVPN, all these like household VPN names, and they're always talking about protect your privacy, don't let big tech spy on you, all this kind of stuff. But then you kind of realize that these VPN companies are kind of like big tech, because a lot of them are owned by the same holding company or conglomerate. And so what this Windscribe folks did is they basically went through and looked at a bunch of popular VPN services, and you could see how many of them are owned by the same company, which is, I guess, not the end of the world if one company offers VPNs under multiple brands, different target markets, different segmentation, whatever. But the kicker was these holding companies or the conglomerates also have marketing agencies and advertising arms inside the same portfolio. So you're telling me that your VPN data, you're not buying these things for 5, 10, 100 million, $1 billion for ExpressVPN, and you're not buying that for no reason. You're buying it to make money back, and it's going to be through that data that's collected, even though a lot of them say they do and they don't. So I don't know. This was an eye opener. I think even this page alone is a really good one that you've got on screen here, Brent, because it just shows how much is being acquired year after year by these, arguably no-name companies. And I think that happens a lot, and people don't realize, because it doesn't make, the market splash, because nobody really notices or cares about it, or it doesn't get, a lot of press coverage. But yeah, consolidation is just a scary thing, because you're bringing all this stuff together, and you might have had trust with one vendor and now you don't anymore. I think the biggest one was, like we talked about earlier, Google bought Fitbit, and then everybody freaked out as if that was going to be what flicks the switch on, healthcare privacy all of a sudden. But what are your thoughts on kind of just even this VPN example? Because VPN has always been kind of like the gold standard for security, for privacy, for protecting yourself. And then you realize that maybe you're not even safe with VPNs, or you can't even trust these guys anymore.
And these guys went one step further and purchased the review companies, and that reviews VPN.
Yeah,
right? that is that extra kick in there. And frankly, I mean, when looking at it, the distribution is equally important as the product itself. And they obviously figured that out and decided that a lot of people purchase VPN through the review sites, and they go and buy those. This reminded me of another company, Luxottica, in a different sector. Right? Luxottica is very similar, where they aggregated all eyewear companies in there. They now own Ray-Ban to all other brands pretty much. They are 80, 90+% of the market, something like that.
Yeah.
And and the companies that try to go independent, they muzzle their way into acquiring them. A good example is Oakley. They had to acquire Oakley, and the same continues. And on top of being the manufacturer of all eyewear across various brands, they also own the distribution. They own Sunglass to various other stores out there. And then not just that, they also own these prescription wear. And to make it worse, they also are the insurance providers for prescription lenses and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
full stack vertical integration.
It is, full stack vertical integration. And this is unfortunately seen industry after industry after industry. And I see this as a grand failure of the FTC. And there is a product, and then there is a distribution. Every company wants to own these, wants to own the distribution. Google is a good example. Google is the search service. What is the distribution channel for search? It's a browser, their own browser, right? Like the Chrome. What is the distribution for Chrome? It's an operating system. Well, that's why they did Android. What's the distribution for Android? Well, it goes on a hardware. That's why they get into the hardware. And what's the distribution of the cell phone service? Well, they need the service provider. That's why they started offering service. It could be Google Fiber or digital service providers. I think they have a plan there as well. And they also partner with other service providers. Like in India, they partnered with Jio, and they have, I'm sure they have similar partnerships on there. But where is that distribution of those traffic going? Well, it goes on the backbone. That's why they're investing on the backbone and whatnot. If you keep and where does that traffic land? Well, it lands on endpoint is basically in a triopoly of AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft, right? So those are these cloud services. So right from Google, the service, to serving at the other end, all of these are, owning the distribution channels. And we have a series of monopolies that are horizontally and vertically integrated across the board to own all of these. So what these VPN companies have done is essentially that. They realize that a large percentage of these software users purchases through review sites. So they said, we'll acquire review sites. And the review sites themselves are scams. To put it bluntly. If you look at their business model, they are reaching out to the vendors and asking vendors to reach out to their customers to review on their side. So in other words, the vendors are the ones providing free content to these review sites, and they also sell promotions to these vendors so that they can generate leads. So these review sites offer lead gen to vendors. They take the money from the vendors, bid against the vendor's keywords on Google to get better ranking. So search for any standard keywords on Google. You'll probably see all the review sites pop up on the first page, using the content provided by the vendor, money provided by the vendor, competing with the vendor. So these guys did something smart where they acquired these review sites and started distributing their VPN. That is what happens when there's no control of the market, and again, go back to that point where it's a grand failure of the FTC on consolidation. And this consolidation applies across the board, be it education industry, finance industry, healthcare industry. It goes back to that consolidation, allowing this consolidation, lack of competition is the result of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's another story actually too in terms of consolidation. It was Imgur is a super popular photo sharing, image sharing thing. Started out, I think, really closely tied to Reddit, and then kind of just often used. I used it extensively for a lot of things. It's just super easy, great API to upload things to very quickly and easily, and share things. No fuss, some ads here and there, but whatever, you dealt with it. But they got bought up by basically the same company that owns Kick, like the, I guess, kind of messaging platform that nobody uses anymore. Genius, which does like lyrics for a lot of websites. World Star Hip Hop, that has a lot of entertainment media content. And all three of these are, these are essentially free services masquerade by some level of surveillance, data tracking, things like that, right? You don't get lyrics for free and have all that information for free out there. You're being tracked in some way, shape, or form, and that information is being, distributed out, probably without your knowledge if you're not familiar with it. So to now have these like millions or not even millions, definitely billions of photos from Imgur be kind of part of the same conglomerate, a little suspect. You don't really know why. I don't think Imgur is like printing money out here, so it's not like a viable business. But you connect all the different dots of media and free media content, and you're able to aggregate a much bigger picture. And then I was looking into the actual company that bought them. Brent, I think you had a slide for it. It was Medialab. And so Medialab has a pretty questionable, I think, privacy policy. It's kind of hard to find. I think their website like medialab.ai or something, and you have to dig through their privacy policy, and it talks a lot about how information is shared across different properties or services that they own. So it's not like siloed in one by one. At least they say that upright. very clear. But I mean, here you've got it in bold, which I think says it the best. Presumably, the goal is to bundle traffic from these properties to sell ads or data, which is all it is, right? And so you buy a bunch of these services up together, and now usually there was a middleman that is maybe a data broker or a data aggregator that put all the pieces together. But now you have but in order to have that middleman, you would have to do that like anonymized data thing we talked about earlier, and then de-anonymize it. Here, if you own all the brands, there is no anonymization or de-anonymization because you're not really sharing or selling it to external parties because you yourself are becoming the ad platform. And I think we'll see a lot more of this kind of stuff in general, especially in terms of like media consolidation, just because it might not be super profitable on your own, but you put 5, 6, 10 of these together and you get a much bigger, better picture for the people that are visiting your sites and how to target them better.
Hey, we have a question. Maybe one of you can handle it. Are there far more VPN players popping up? Are we just seeing whack-a-mole here? They keep sprouting them and then they keep acquiring them and aggregating them. Is that the game right now?
I mean, I would say there's definitely more VPN providers popping up because it's not rocket science to build a VPN. You're basically just routing data, oftentimes through OpenVPN, which is like I would say an open source, if I'm not mistaken, VPN technology or point-to-point, however it works. But you're basically just feeding that traffic from one place to another through an intermediary. And this way you don't get tracked. That intermediary that's loading the content and then sending it to you, that's getting tracked. So it's not like rocket science to build one, which I think is kind of why it makes it worse because, I mean, it's tricky because a lot of them will say that, we don't log your data or we don't store any kind of historical information. Clearly that has to be false because otherwise you're not buying up 8 of these services for like anywhere from 10 to $1 billion for no reason, right? Not on subscription revenue alone. There must be some other alternative way. And I could probably, the amount of times I've heard ExpressVPN advertisements on like podcasts or like YouTube shows is mind blowing. Like the amount of money these guys spend, it has to be just through the roof. And I don't think they're making that much money on subscriptions. I mean, probably an unsubstantiated claim, but if I dug a little bit more, I'm sure we could find how nefarious they are. So to answer the actual question, I think there are more players popping up. What can someone really do to protect themselves? That becomes a lot tougher. A lot of people will say VPN back to your home, but then your ISP is tracking you. So that's not really, any better. I don't know. What do you think, Raju? Is there a good way, or is everybody just kind of out of luck?
End of the day, pick VPN providers where you have clarity on their business model. The business model plays a critical role here. Now, a lot of VPN companies out there, it is known that there are always other people who are looking to aggregate, then you'll try to create a VPN, become a little popular, show some momentum, and sell it, make a quick buck and retire, right? Mm-hmm. That has been the business model for a lot of these companies. Are there and then during the process they may raise some money, and whenever you raise some money, you need an exit, and that thing keeps going, the usual thing. So which means you cannot trust them in the long run. So pick providers, and I think this article was created by someone who's by a company that is bootstrapped, that is in the business of offering a truthful VPN solution. Those are the ones I would rather trust than the ones who are starting, raised a bunch of money, and you know that whenever you raise money, you have to exit, and once you exit, you have to you get out of it. And this after a while, after 3 years, 4 years, after exit, you realize that there's a conflict in interest. And this morning I read that the Whole Foods CEO is exiting, right? Well, there's a reason, and you should see that coming. So just the same way, whenever you sell a company, the values change. We have seen that with WhatsApp. Well, we have discussed that. Right? The founders left and then started a competition because their values do not align. So these things do happen. So if you're picking a VPN provider, pick someone that is trustworthy and can stick offering good service and not greedy. I think that is at least whenever I look at a service, that is one of my key criteria.
I just want to go back to this slide. Maybe this kind of tells the story. with Cape Technologies, I kind of feel bad for CyberGhost and ZenMate, because back when they got acquired in 2017, 2018, it was like chump change. Look at all the acquisitions that have happened in 2019 and 2020 on both sides of this thing, particularly ExpressVPN. Maybe CyberGhost could have gotten like an extra $950 million or something if they had held out. But it seems like there is a lot of momentum. Look at all the acquisition. I know this isn't an exhaustive list, but it seems like the trickle might have started in 2017 or thereabouts. Now it's a full stream, and it's like full stream ahead because there's money to be made, and you guys are. It's amazing what's going on out there.
And if you look at their review site owned by Cape, guess what the number one recommended VPN solution is? That's
not just the number one, number two, number three, number four. They're all their own services.
But that probably is also ranked based on the amount they paid to acquire. So number one, because they need to get a lot more money out of it.
Yeah, number one, because it's making us more money than anything else right now. So we need you to keep on doing that.
And we spend a lot of money. We better make it back.
Yeah, I think in this Windscribe article, I think there was like a little tongue-in-cheek comment where like they put ExpressVPN as number 2 because they were like being modest and thinking that if they didn't put it up front, it might not look as shady. And I was like, well, you didn't really fool anybody. Yeah, Anand brings up a good point about the Imgur thing. I think Genius has a big community as well. Worldstar Hip Hop has a big community as well. So all three of them are heavily good on community, which is honestly even better because the more engaged community, you're paying a premium for it, obviously. But, that means you have people coming back, and that increases the value of every single visitor on the site. The more engaged they are, a hit and run is far less valuable than a returning customer. So yeah, you pay a premium for it, but he's right. I never thought photo sharing would have a big community, but there's a lot. Like there's a lot of comments and stuff like that. I think the deep Reddit integration helps a lot because comments can come back and forth. So yeah, it's not like I would by no means call it like a dumb acquisition, but just something you got to kind of watch for because you're picking up all these different media properties and consolidating them some way. Generally, that's not good news for the consumer, just historically speaking. We are kind of over time a few. Maybe we spent too many minutes talking about the toilet today. So let's see. I think I think we can wrap with that. We'll be back next week, next Friday, same time. Like, share, subscribe, because that's the most important thing in the world. And enjoy October already.
See you.